Dillian the Body Snatcher White here. It's a champ. Big up to Sporting Icon. Subscribe. Otherwise, I might pay you guys a visit.
Right, I hope everybody is doing well and enjoying your Easter break. Now, before we get into the main crux of this video, automatically when we talk about Dillian Whyte versus Deontay Wilder, and I've seen it time and time again, and I'm sure I'm probably going to see it in this video as well, which will be, well, if old man Alexander Povetkin can knock out Dillian Whyte, imagine what Wilder would do. Okay, so let me ask you a couple of questions here, which is, firstly, when was the first or even last time that you ever seen Wilder throw an uppercut? That's the only time that Dillian Whyte has ever been stopped. Uppercut from AJ, uppercut from Povetkin. Have you ever seen Wilder throw an uppercut? For those who say that Wilder would absolutely smoke Dillian Whyte, okay, sure, if he lands. But what happens if Dillian lands on Wilder? What happens then? Who has a better resume between Dillian Whyte, who's had 37 fights, amateur and pro combined, or Deontay Wilder, who had 36 fights just as an amateur, including the Olympics, and has had, 44 fights as a pro? Who has a better resume? When you want to say that Deontay Wilder's best win on his resume would be Luis Ortiz, who is older than Povetkin, who is nowhere near as accomplished as Alexander Povetkin. Right, now let's get into this video. Now, Dillian Whyte on social media, on his Instagram to be precise, you don't have to be a member of Instagram to be able to go watch it for yourself. Link in the description box. Now, Dillian said this to Deontay Wilder: "I want to punish Deontay Wilder. The coward is full of fear. Come see me, fraud clown." Dillian Whyte's statement. Now, why is he calling him a fraud? Why is he calling him a coward? Now, I've shown you guys over the past couple of years the images of Dillian Whyte showing DAZN the messages that Deontay Wilder had sent him, saying how he's going to freeze him out, he doesn't have to fight him, and all this kind of thing. This is when Wilder, of course, was champion, and Dillian Whyte was number one for how long? Okay, but this is what Wilder was doing, freezing him out, didn't want to fight him for a so-called easy fight, as some people may have you believe. Okay, now, is Wilder a coward? Well, just that one instance there will tell you he is. Wilder will talk a great game. He will talk how he's going to do this and he'll do that, and he'll knock out anybody. He only has to be perfect for 1 second of a round, where everybody has to be perfect for every second of all 12 rounds, 36 minutes. But ultimately, who's Wilder really iced? Who's he really beat? Outside of Luis Ortiz, who? If he couldn't beat and very, very inactive, 2.5 to 3 years inactive Tyson Fury, who is still out of shape, went through everything that Tyson Fury went through. If he couldn't do that in the first fight, then how good is Wilder? And when Fury actually got a little bit of momentum, got himself into condition, what did he do? He pummeled him. Now, I've interviewed Dillian countless times. And we spoke about the thought of Dillian fighting Deontay Wilder how many times? We spoke about it so many times. And Dillian has said for the longest time now that how you beat Wilder is you put pressure on him. Wilder don't like it around the whiskers. We've seen Wilder, he's been wobbled and whatever else by Eric Molina. We've seen that he's been beaten the crap out of by, of course, Tyson Fury and Luis Ortiz as well. But of course, Wilder, he always pulls out the big punch. But he was beaten from pillar to post by Artur Spilka, by Johan Duapa. He hit the canvas against a journeyman in Harold Sconiers. We've seen this with Deontay Wilder. And Dillian was there physically in camp when he watched Vladimir Klitschko bounce Wilder up and down off the canvas. So Dillian knows. He's always known how to beat Wilder, but Wilder, he knows too. He knows that Dillian knows how to beat him, which is why he never wanted to fight him. That's the truth of it. And he's turned down multi-million-dollar offers from Dillian Whyte to fight Wilder. And I have heard quite a few people say, and there seems to be this narrative that Dillian has turned down a Wilder fight before. Trust me, he has never, ever turned down a fight from Wilder. Do you know why? Because Wilder's never offered him. He's never offered him. But Dillian has offered Wilder quite a few times. And this is at a time as well, by the way, where Wilder's highest payday was $2.1 million when he fought Luis Ortiz the first time. Dillian went in with a minimum $7 million. Wilder turned it down. But Wilder, he will talk a lot, but when it comes to walking the walk, he doesn't do it. I do believe that he spoke so much about Anthony Joshua that the reality hit when he was backed against a wall, when he was offered that $100 million two-fight deal with Anthony Joshua, 4 undisputed, by the way. The reality hit. If I don't back it up, this is going to be embarrassing. And it's the same thing. He said that Dillian Whyte was he a spare tire for Eddie Hearn, and he's the guy who gets in the way and fights all the opponents that Eddie Hearn doesn't want Joshua fighting, and this, that, and the other. But how easy is Dillian Whyte? This is what Wilder's been saying, that Dillian Whyte is easy work for him. Well, if he's so much easy work, then why hasn't he taken the easy money? Why hasn't he done it? At a time when people were begging for Wilder to actually fight somebody, fight a live opponent. There's Dillian Whyte. You beat Dillian Whyte, your profile goes through the roof in a good way. Because finally, you've got somebody credible on your resume. And as I said before, anybody who says that Dillian Whyte, he got beat by Povetkin, okay, but he absolutely outdone him in the rematch. And people will say how, well, Povetkin, he didn't quite look right. You could see that his body language wasn't there or blah. Yeah, because Dillian caught him with an absolute peach in the opening seconds of the first round, didn't he? That's why Povetkin just went into his shell, went into fear, and got brutally stopped. But anyway, it is what it is. Whoever you think is going to win between Dillian and Deontay Wilder, at this point, it's not really that important, because ultimately, the only way for anybody to be proved right or wrong is for these two to fight. I'm a huge supporter of Dillian Whyte. But differences with me and some Wilder fans is that I actually want to see my guys fight other people. I want to see them prove it. I have tremendous belief in Dillian Whyte. And so far, he's proven me right time and time again. Sure, he's hit roadblocks, of course. But he dusts himself down, he doesn't make excuses, and he gets back on the horse and he completes the rodeo. That's what he does. Dillian will fight anybody. People will say how he turned down Luis Ortiz. Again, we've spoken about this to death. Dillian Whyte has offered Luis Ortiz fights before, and Luis Ortiz has turned them down. There are receipts for this. Okay? Dillian has a much better resume than Deontay Wilder. Dillian Whyte will risk it. He will. And he has no problem fighting Deontay Wilder. He has no problem fighting Deontay Wilder in Alabama. He will go to Deontay Wilder's back garden and fight him. He doesn't care. Wilder, will he travel? No, not at all. Now, is this fight likely to happen? For me, I would say no. Even if the WBC were to order it, I don't think they would. Because Wilder, he's been the A-side for so long. But of course, he has been A-side to absolute bums. But he's not going to want to be a B-side to anybody now. He's not going to want that. We don't even need to talk about his mental state with all the excuses. I mean, you've got to be pretty mentally weak to come out with the amount of excuses that he has. And when I spoke to Bob Arum, not last time, but the time before, he was saying that Wilder's character is showing through. Wilder has always had this excuse-making defensive mentality. He's always had that. But it's only now you're really seeing it. I mean, who comes out with a whole list of excuses the way that he did? And some of them, well, in fact, all of them really are absolute ludicrous as to why he lost to Tyson Fury. Why Tyson Fury beat the absolute dog shit out of him. Dillian Whyte didn't make any excuses. Hey, I got caught in a rematch, I'll get it right. And that's exactly what he done. Dillian Whyte's mentality is pure warrior. Wilder doesn't have that. And I'm pretty sure when you see Wilder's opponent, whomever it may be, it ain't going to be somebody that's going to make you go, oh, that's good. And again, we can look at Wilder and say, okay, well, where is it that you go from here? There's only 2 fights out there that people will be really interested in. Of course, outside of the Anthony Joshua and maybe a Tyson Fury third fight. But again, I don't think people are really interested in a Tyson Fury third fight. But Dillian Whyte and Andy Ruiz Jr., he will go the Andy Ruiz Jr. route because Andy Ruiz Jr., as good as what he is, as dangerous as what he is for Wilder, he's not a brutal knockout artist like Dillian. He's not somebody who will punish you the way Dillian will. He's not somebody who has the confidence to just put it on you and not let you off the hook the way that Dillian Whyte does. Andrews Jr. is a phenomenal fighter. He really is. But I think that's the route he'll go down. Also for the fact that it is an in-house PBC fight. For me, I fully expect to see Wilder and Andy Ruiz Jr. But going back onto the point, Dillian Whyte is the WBC interim world heavyweight champion. I've said it before and I'll say it again for those of you who haven't heard me say it yet. That interim status means that if anything was to happen with the current WBC champion, i.e. Tyson Fury currently, if he was to vacate the belt, if he was to retire, if he was to get stripped of the belt will be automatically handed to the interim champion, currently Dillian Whyte. This makes Dillian Whyte's interim world title very, very important. This makes him the A side when it comes to negotiations. I know people don't want to talk about negotiations and A side, B side. I don't particularly want to talk about it either. But the reality is, Dillian is the A side when it comes to Wilder in every sense of the word. He's a bigger name in the sport than Deontay Wilder. He's a bigger ticket seller than Deontay Wilder. He's a pay-per-view fighter. Deontay Wilder is not unless he has a very good dance partner. Dillian ticks all the boxes. Stylistically, he's better than Wilder in every category. Dillian Whyte's a novice in the game, really, isn't he? 37 fights, amateur and pro. Deontay Wilder is touching amateur and pro not too far away from 100 fights. Anyway, it is what it is. Dillian Whyte called him a coward, called him a fraud. And he is a fraud. Let's be honest, he is a fraud. Look at his resume. Look at who he's beat. Look at who he's fought, even as champion. When you're pulling out the names of Johan Duapa as a title defense, Chris Arreola as a title defense. He even tried to fight that, was it Andres Wojcik or something, whatever his name was, Maris Wojcik, I don't know. He even tried to fight him as champion once, did he not? Ran away from Povetkin, when Povetkin, sure, there was an adverse finding in his sample, but the B sample came back okay. He was cleared to fight. Wilder refused. People want to say Povetkin's a drug cheat. Okay, call him a drug cheat. After the fight, after what was supposed to have been the Deontay Wilder fight, when Povetkin was supposed to have taken on Bermane Stiverne. That's the one. That's the reason why he's got a black mark on his resume. Not because of Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder bottled it against Povetkin, which is why Povetkin has actually countersued Deontay Wilder and won. Anyway, would I want to see this fight? Absolutely. Dillian Whyte's my guy. And I want to see the fight. I'm not just talking about it. I want to see it. Wilder fans will talk about it and say how easy Dillian Whyte is, but they don't want to see it. They don't want to see it. These people would rather have Wilder have moral victories just by talking than actually have a physical victory because they don't want him to risk it. And that's how it's always been. Drop your thoughts below, click thumbs up, subscribe, catch you on the next video.